Andre Ward finally reacts to Shakur Stevenson versus his last opponent, Nakathila, and he explains his stance and what he felt truly about Shakur's performance. A lot of people were talking. Andre Ward finally gives his thoughts. Stay tuned. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. Listen, be a part of the community. Hit the subscribe button. I drop daily boxing content. That's what's in it for you. If you love the sport, the sweet science, all things boxing, this is your one-stop shop. Boxingego. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a thing. And you get the latest updates when I go live. Now, Shakur Stevenson recently fought an African opponent, not really heralded. A lot of people weren't familiar with his name or brand. His name was Nakathila. Shakur Stevenson, we are all familiar with him. He's a silver medalist. I knew about Shakur back when the sparrings leaked, when he was like 16, and we started hearing how good he was. Then he signed with Jay Prince. He had Andre Ward managing him. He signed with Top Rank, and the rest is history. There's a lot of questions and different opinions out there regarding what you see on screen and his performance versus Nakathila, right? And Andre Ward spoke. This is what he had to say. He says, context to Shakur Stevenson's performance Saturday night. Some felt it was, quote, boring. Others did not. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. The fight was not boring to me. I felt he could do more because he's that good. Shakur will grow from this, and he will become and be better because of this. Hashtag growing pains. So Andre Ward, definitely one of Shakur's favorite fighters, and somebody's been there for Shakur. He cleared the air on what he said on the air and people's perception of it. So you hear out the horse's mouth as opposed to a rendition of it. He also says, side note, there have been many great, all-time great Hall of Fame fighters who have made plenty of money in their careers who were also labeled, quote, boring. Shakur is in good company, wink, right? In respects to Andre Ward, that's his opinion. I'm going to kind of give you some of my thoughts. I'm not going to walk back my comments. I still feel, me personally, respect to Dre Ward, I thought the Shakur performance was actually boring, but it was more boring. And it's not that I don't like good boxing and fundamentally sound boxers, because I participate the man on screen, some of his fights where he's just showcasing all his skill set and things like that. Floyd Mayweather, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Terrence Crawford has had performances like the Ray Beltran fight where he didn't get a knockout and stuff like that. So I'm not knockout hungry where I feel like I have to see a knockout or, the performance was bad. But the reason why Shakur's performance to me got boring, so to speak, is because it was repetitious. And similar to Andre Ward, I do believe Shakur, who he is, once he taps into his skill set and maybe digs a little bit deeper into the killer instinct, the kill zone, the kill switch, like guys like Andre Ward, Terrence Crawford, and even Floyd Mayweather have shown, then he'll put it together a little bit better. So for me, the reason why his performance did get a little bit, because it was just really repetitious and it was all the same thing. And I really felt there was an opponent in there with him that really couldn't do nothing with him. So against that level of opposition and it's crazy because a lot of people, they act like they were disagreeing with me, but they didn't really disagree with me. It's strange. And I think part of the calamity comes from, we constantly see old media berate the same fighters, oftentimes the black fighter, right? Or fighters, and like Andre Ward is saying, call certain fighters boring and stuff like that. But I didn't think this was fit into that particular group of fights for causation, because, for example, Floyd Mayweather, easy work, I ain't got worried about it. He was getting called boring for performances where he put on a masterclass against an elite name or a relevant party in the division at that time. Like, let's say Robert the Ghost Guerrero. When I watch Mayweather Guerrero, I'm like taking notes and like, man, this dude, there are shots that it wasn't that Guerrero was so trash or whatever. He was his mandatory. It was Floyd was that good. You know, look at Guerrero's face. Shots would look at Guerrero's face is cut up, and this is the interim champion. You know, this was his mandatory. He had to fight him. And like you see this picture, there was like shots whizzing by. Guerrero was trying to mount an attack, but he couldn't, and he was getting peppered. And Floyd was coming off of the little prison stint after the Cotto fight. So I would like to have seen more of that from Shakur, more of this type of mastery, especially given the level of opponent. Now, I also told you, in my honest opinion, and it's not even just this Mayweather fight. People said Mayweather Canelo was boring. That wasn't boring. Canelo got schooled. He got trashed. He got dogged. And we're seeing that. And it's unfair to compare a 36-year-old Floyd Mayweather to Shakur Stevenson, who's 22. I can get that argument. But you have to blame ESPN and Top Rank for also creating that. They created that monster. So if you create that monster and you constantly throw that comparison up, then that's the standard where, you know, the perception, that's the perception and that's the standard that you create, then you kind of get held to that. And I think that's why people said what they said about Shakur's performance. Like ESPN, you know, I'm sure I can pull it up, you know, that ain't no thing but a chicken wing. But ESPN on their page to promote the fight, they did a graphic comparing Shakur Stevenson to Floyd Mayweather. And I feel like when you start doing those and start, like, let's say I get into martial arts and then people start saying, oh, ego, there it is. See, pulled it up right there. If I get into martial arts and then I say I'm the next Bruce Lee instead of just being the next ego, you know what I mean? So the company that he fights on this network, they're the ones making the comparison. So between Shakur having an illustrious amateur pedigree and background and Shakur constantly being compared to Floyd Mayweather from certain members of the media, or in this case, his own network. Yeah, when you fight a guy like a Nakathila, you know, people are going to expect you to press on the gas in spots. And this is the other thing, just so we're all in the clear. When I was saying my opinion, in no way, shape, or form, see, I can't be responsible for what other people say. So don't come to my channel like worried about what I say or telling me what somebody else said or whatever. Like at the end of the day, I only know what I'm saying. But some people seemingly were like offended. Shakur apologized for his own performance. I don't think he had to do that. It, like Andre Ward is saying, it's a growing pain. He can learn from it. The other reason for me personally, as an avid boxing fan and a voice in the boxing community and someone who's been doing this, that I felt it's different is, like I said, he was getting Floyd comparisons and things like that. Shakur himself apologized, so there's no way he felt 1,000% that his performance wasn't lacking. So I didn't really have a problem with even the Tim Bradleys or whoever that thought this performance was a little bit lacking, or it did get boring, because that's how I thought, right? He also put pressure on himself. He said, I'll never lose to a cop. He said, down goes 12 for the culture. So, you know, it's all a learning lesson. All a learning lesson for Shakur. There's a lot of pressure on him naturally because he's that good. Also because of Top Rank in the matchmaking. Like when people seen his poster, they weren't even familiar with who his foe is. And then he says, down goes 12. I'll never lose to a cop and stuff like that. Plus, he already comes from a boxing pedigree and background in terms of being an Olympian, and people are like already like saying he's the next up. So that's why I think Shakur received some of the criticism. Again, I don't know what other people say. I don't know what other people are talking about, but I too thought this performance, I could have seen a little bit more. The other thing for me is I thought the fight with Nakathila looked very similar to the Toka Khan Clary. You know what I mean? So I just feel like that with this criticism, I understood his last two fights have looked kind of like that. And I'm not expecting or wanting Shakur to fight like a maniac and not safely get the job done. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he should go out there just to please the fans. It's just kind of like what Andre Ward said. I think he's good enough and he's mindful on his defense to the point where he could slip some shots, jab his way in, work the body more. Because let's say Nakathila had some power. He probably did, you know. A lot of tough fighters from Africa, Ghana, Josh Clottey, people like that. So if he has some power, there's ways to negate that. You break them down. If you're mediocre power or less or average power, whatever, you can still negate that. Tim Bradley, one of the commentators who said he fell asleep during the performance, he knocked out a guy who's known as a tough man in boxing in terms of Brandon Rios when they fought. That was just because of strategy. Him and Teddy Atlas had a brilliant strategy that they employed. So again, I think Shakur put pressure on himself, just coming from his background and what people expected. The fact that Top Rank got an opponent that wasn't really known about. I mean, all these things culminated into the performance. But I also told you I'd rather have an ugly W rather than I'd rather have an ugly W instead of a pretty loss. You know, like, you impressed the fans, but you got an L on your record. So never would I suggest that a person like Shakur abandon your faculties or your, you know, fundamentals for the sake of people or anything like. So I just want to give you an update on a little bit more of my thoughts. I did think the fight was boring because it kept lingering on, and I think Shakur could have put it together in a way where he could have yielded even more impressive thoughts. The guy's balance looked bad, his legs looked bad, no one knew him, and although he may have had power, I think Shakur is mindful on defense and stuff, and he could have got around that. But people had, with this particular fight, I feel like people felt a different types of ways, just like Andre Ward is saying. It's different than I've seen in the past. Like, sometimes old media, like, look at Rigondeaux. Bro, Rigondeaux's fighting a guy who's like 5'10", and he's destroying him. He was almost 6 feet tall, and he was destroying him. And look at his man's cheek. Look at his man's cheek. And they were saying that was boring. That's the difference. Bro, look at his face, bro. He out here looking like Mac and me. Look at his man's cheek, like he got a tennis ball in his cheek. Look at his man, looks like Rocky Dennis, the Elephant Man. Mac and me. Hold on, y'all remember Mac and me? Bro, he out here looking like Mac and me. And people in old media was saying that he was boring for performances like that or Donaire. That's different than what I seen personally. Let me get this Mac and me off my screen. That's different personally than what I seen in the Shakur fight. I think Shakur could have mixed it up and had a spicier performance based on his skills. So me and Andre Ward agree to a degree. You know, Shakur could have mixed it up a little bit different, and I think people would have been more impressed with the bro. Let me get off of this man. This dude look crazy, bro. He looked like a cartoon character or something, like Men in Black. What's the little worm from Men in Black? Bro, they was calling Rigondeaux boring, and his opponent's face was looking like the Men in Black aliens and all that. That's the difference. So, in closing, Shakur Stevenson, I think he'll be all right. Again, I'd rather just collect. Let me get off this page. I'd rather just collect the victory and just move on and grow from it. And if there was a level of criticism from people, then you know what to do next. You know, get back in the gym and learn from the people around you. Terrence Crawford, because that's the thing. Terrence Crawford. Some people feel like Terrence Crawford, some of his opposition at welterweight hasn't been the names that people wanted, like the Errol Spence, the Pacquiao, the Sean Porter, or Keith Thurman, whoever. But the thing about Crawford that's different, the differentiating factor is, if you're not supposed to be there with Crawford, you won't be there. He'll get you out of there for sure. And there's different levels of power. David Benavidez, he's kind of like that too. The guys that aren't supposed to be in there with him, he'll get out. And I think Shakur skillfully has the mindset, and I think he has enough power where he could get the guys out. Like, if it was Jamel Herring, somebody who's a champion, or Oscar Valdez, and you can't stop him, you just outbox him, then that's cool. I don't think he would have got shade for that. I think it's a lot to do with, he said, I won't lose to a cop, the Mayweather comparisons, and I guess the obscurity of his opponent mixed in with the ESPN telecast is telling you it's boring and stuff like that. So Anyway, in closing, let me know what you guys think. Use my link in the description to get TUBEBUDDY. TUBEBUDDY is an awesome way to level up your YouTube content as a creator. Make some money on this platform like your boy Ego. That was Andre Ward's response. Let me know what you guys think. Click the link in the description for TUBEBUDDY. Let me know what you think of Dre Ward. He set the record straight and said he wasn't bored. He just thinks that Shakur Stevenson could have did something different. So it sounds like a lot of the realistic fans have some similar takes. It's just slight variances. Let me know what you think. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next videos, Ego, and I'm signing off.